Jackson, a digital artist with a knack for bringing life to pixels, found himself trawling through an online forum late one evening. His studio apartment, littered with tech gadgets and half-finished art projects, reflected his restless spirit. Despite his talent, Jackson felt a growing sense of dissatisfaction with his work. It was as though the digital landscapes he created lacked a soul, a story to tell. That night, as he scrolled aimlessly, a thread titled "Echoes of Time, Visual Alchemy" piqued his interest. The post was vague, with cryptic descriptions of a software that could unveil the past and future of any photographed object. Skeptical, yet intrigued, Jackson clicked on the link provided. The software, a simple executable file with no brand or developer name, downloaded onto his cluttered desktop. It was a plain interface, almost archaic in its design, prompting the user to upload a photo. On a whim, Jackson selected a digital scan of an old Polaroid, a photo of his late grandfather's house in its current dilapidated state. The house, a once proud and lively family hub, now stood abandoned, its stories buried under layers of neglect. As the software processed the image, his screen flickered erratically. When it finally stabilized, he was left staring in disbelief. The output was a vibrant image of the same house, but it was different. The walls were freshly painted, windows gleamed under the sun, and the front yard was alive with a garden in full bloom. It was the house, but from a time long before Jackson's memories began, a stark contrast to its present reality. This unexpected result sparked a flame of fascination in Jackson. He began to experiment more. He fed the software various photos: an old city square, a rusted car, a faded painting in his living room. Each time, the software returned images that were either steeped in historical context or projected into an unforeseen future. A photo of the city square showed it bustling with horse-drawn carriages, while the rusted car was transformed into a futuristic vehicle, sleek and efficient. Jackson's skepticism gradually turned into an obsession. He delved into historical archives online, extracting photos of places and things, feeding them to the software. The results were consistent and eerily accurate, matching historical records or logically extrapolating into the future. The lines between his art and this newfound tool began to blur as he spent days and nights in a trance, uncovering hidden slices of time. It was during one of these marathon sessions that curiosity took hold, and Jackson decided to use a selfie for the software. The image he chose was a recent one, taken on a day he felt particularly successful after completing a significant project. The software whirred to life, and the screen once again flickered in its now familiar dance. The image that appeared on the screen this time made his heart sink. It was him, undoubtedly, but older, with streaks of gray in his hair and a hardened look in his eyes. The background was a stark minimalist room, filled with advanced technology unfamiliar to him. In this image, he stood alone, an aura of loneliness surrounding him. It was a future where he seemed to have achieved success, but at the cost of his happiness and connections. This image haunted Jackson. He found himself staring at it for hours, pondering the path that would lead him there. In the days following his unsettling glimpse into a potential future, Jackson's life began to shift in ways he couldn't have imagined. The more he used the Echoes of Time software, the more his reality seemed to warp and weave around him, tangling past, present, and future into a surreal tapestry. The changes started subtly. Jackson noticed them first in his studio apartment, his sanctuary amidst the chaos of the city. His old analog clock, a relic from his grandfather, began to behave oddly. One moment it would be the familiar, time-worn face he had always known, and the next it appeared sleek and digital, displaying time in a format he couldn't quite understand. His artwork, too, began to change. The digital landscapes and abstracts he had created started to shift when he wasn't looking. A cityscape he had painted, known for its futuristic neon lights, transformed overnight into an archaic version of itself, resembling a historical painting more than a digital creation. Outside, the world seemed to echo the dissonance in his apartment. The city streets, once predictable in their modern chaos, now occasionally flickered to scenes from another era. People dressed in contemporary clothes would momentarily appear in outfits that seemed to belong to the early 1900s, only to snap back to the present. Jackson walked these streets in a daze, questioning his sanity, wondering if he was the only one witnessing these anomalies. His friends began to notice the changes in Jackson. He talked incessantly about the fluidity of time and how reality wasn't as fixed as it seemed. His words, once coherent and insightful, now sounded like the ramblings of a man losing touch with the world. Invitations to social gatherings dwindled, and concerned calls from family became more frequent, but Jackson was too far gone, too entrenched in the enigma that echoes of time presented. He spent days and nights hunched over his computer, feeding the software more images, watching as they revealed secrets of the past and whispers of the future. The more he discovered, the more he wanted to know, to understand. It was during one of these marathon sessions that Jackson discovered a hidden function in the software. It wasn't just a viewer. It allowed him to alter the images of the past and future. The implications were staggering. On a whim, he uploaded a photograph from a family vacation, one of the few happy memories from his adolescence. With a few clicks, he removed his presence from the scene and processed the image. The next morning, Jackson woke up to a world subtly altered. His family no longer remembered him being on that vacation. Photos in the apartment that once included him at that event now showed empty spaces where he used to be. Jackson awoke with a start. His body sprawled uncomfortably on the cold floor of his apartment. Sunlight streamed through the window, casting a warm glow across the room. He sat up slowly, rubbing his head, trying to dispel the fog of disorientation clouding his mind. His apartment was as he had always known it, unremarkably ordinary, or so it seemed. His computer, usually humming with activity, was silent, its screen a blank slate. In the ensuing days, Jackson found himself slipping back into the rhythm of his mundane life. Yet there was an undercurrent of unease that he couldn't quite shake off. It was as though a shadow hung over his daily activities, a lingering sense of something just not being right. He went about his routines in a daze, haunted by a feeling that something significant had happened, something he couldn't quite remember. One quiet evening, while sifting through files on his computer, Jackson's attention was captured by a file name that seemed oddly out of place. Echoes of Time. He stared at the screen, a mix of confusion and intrigue washing over him. The name tugged at something in the back of his mind, a vague memory that he couldn't quite grasp. He had no recollection of downloading it, nor any idea of what it contained. His curiosity piqued. Jackson moved his cursor towards the file. A sense of anticipation built up inside him as he contemplated clicking on it. However, a flicker of apprehension held him back, the fear of the unknown momentarily paralyzing his decision. His finger hovered over the mouse, torn between the desire to explore and the instinct to preserve the normalcy of his life.